Hi there. I think that Zoom and Facebook are getting organized here. So, welcome. My name is Heather Hennessy from Heather Hennessy Life Coaching. And thanks so much for tuning in today. Um, if you've listened to any of my videos in the past, you know that I am thrilled that you're here. But I assume that if you're watching one of my videos, you have a tiny baby in your presence who is either sleeping or who you wish were sleeping. So I do not shout at you. I do not give you a loud welcome because I want to do my part to keep that baby asleep or get that baby to sleep. So, but I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm really talking about a topic that is, I think, sort of universal to the motherhood experience, but is especially acute for working mothers, specifically for my clients who are professional women who are having their first baby or have had their first baby. And it is the topic that we are really unprepared for working motherhood. And I think that that's just a huge part of the reason why working motherhood feels so hard and why so many of us struggle so much. So I spent a lot of the past couple of months sort of talking about why working motherhood can be really challenging for people. Um, and you know, interspersed in there, of course, we talked a lot about the pandemic and about sheltering in place and, how we're all doing with that. And I understand that everybody who is a brand new mom right now is undertaking motherhood in the context of the pandemic, the quarantine, and now, as we're seeing sort of here at the beginning of June, the lifting of some of the stay-at-home orders and reintegration into society. But wherever you are in that process, as we talked about several weeks ago, if you're finding motherhood to be challenging and you're kind of blaming the pandemic or blaming the stay at home or blaming the quarantine or, some sort of combination of those factors, I really invite you to take a step back and listen to what I'm going to say today. I think that the pandemic is just a convenient scapegoat for many of us who, are having some challenges and we're kind of blaming the pandemic, blaming what's going on with COVID. But new motherhood is challenging and a serious, serious life changing adjustment, no matter what is happening regarding global health. So, the most problematic part, I think, of sort of launching into motherhood as a brand new working professional woman is that we think we know a lot of stuff, but we actually don't. And moreover, we're lacking the framework for understanding what's happening to us internally. And for myself and for my clients, so much arises when the baby comes. Literally everything that had been a problem for you before will now become a huge problem. And all of your coping skills from before you became a mom are totally going to stop working. Um, the list is long, but I will just rattle off a few of them that I experienced and that I see so frequently. Mother issues. Did you have any tension with your mom? Do you still have any tension with your mom? Becoming a mother just drags all of that up to the surface. Money issues, your finances, and how adding a member of your household changes your finances and how you relate to money and your thoughts about your money. body issues. Of course, after pregnancy, where your body's really recovering and maybe you gained some weight. Maybe there's, some other health issues that pregnancy has really exacerbated, all of that stuff. Career problems. If you are having any tension about your career, uncertainty, maybe you're not sure which direction you were going, becoming a working mother is just going to drag all of that up for you. And the list could go on, but I just wanted to highlight a few of those just in case you're wondering if this is applying to you, if you're having any of those challenges, it's for sure applying to you. And it's so much all at once. Um, it's not the baby, as we'll talk about here today, but the arrival of the baby is really the catalyst for all of this stuff to just kind of come spilling out all at the same time. And we are caught totally by surprise. This is when I say we're unprepared for working motherhood, this is what I mean is that, you have all of these issues all at once and you're not expecting it. You're expecting to have a baby. You're not expecting for suddenly, you're going to have anxiety attacks about your bank account or a crisis about your own mother or whatever the case may be. I was caught completely by surprise with how hard it was to be a new mom. And I now know that there are several big reasons why I was caught by surprise. And I'm going to talk through a few of those reasons and then talk about, what we do when we are unprepared and we go sort of looking for help. So, why are we unprepared for working motherhood? I think one of the big reasons that we're unprepared and then we're caught by surprise is because we are such successful people overall. Um, that was the case for me before I became a mom, and the women I coach are professional career women, most of whom have a long track record of successes in life. So we identify as successful people. We approach the world as successful people. Then we become new mothers, and the adjustment is harder than we expected. And we are totally confronted with a situation where we're not succeeding that runs counter to our self identity as a successful person. And our self identities hate to be confronted that way. I mean, you talk about sort of a freak out on a subconscious level. That is a recipe for a huge freak out. So, tied in with that view of ourselves as successful career professionals is this dynamic. And this is so fascinating. I mean, this is, hours of conversation in and of itself. I'm just going to mention it briefly here. The dynamic that we don't want to adopt any assumptions or thoughts about ourselves that smack of the old patriarchal assumptions that we're all, working so hard against. And, depending on your age and, whether you were born in the 70s or the 80s, your perception of that can change a little bit. But, we know what we speak of when we say we're successful career people. We identify that way and we want to see ourselves as that. We want others to see us in that way. And so having any kind of thought that, oh, motherhood, there it goes, there she goes having a baby. We don't want to set ourselves up under any kind of structure that we think feeds into that old patriarchal dismissal of women who have babies while they're working. And this was certainly the case for me. I 100% on an unconscious level didn't want to think of myself in any kind of diminished capacity because I was having a baby, and I didn't want anybody else to think of me that way either. So I just kept telling myself that I knew what I was doing and that I got this. I'm going to be fine. So here's the problem. I'm not saying that we should go backwards and adopt the thoughts of the patriarchy, but the problem was that because I didn't want to acknowledge that being a successful working mother was going to involve a lot of changes and adaptations and new approaches, I really failed to prepare myself in some very meaningful ways. Do you see what I'm saying? Sort of labeling any kind of, oh, I better get ready. There's actually some stuff that I could probably do to get myself ready for this. I've never had a kid before. I don't know what I'm in for, so I better wrap my head around this. That's not an acknowledgement of the patriarchy. It's an acknowledgement of my reality as a working mom. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't have the benefit of coaching, so I had it all kind of lumped together in my head, whereas separating the two out, there is, you know, the old attitudes that we really want to move beyond and be part of the solution of moving beyond. And then there's my reality as a person who had never been a mom before and suddenly a brand new mom. I did need to do life and career and things a little bit differently. So, like I said, these are all the things that lead us to be unprepared for working motherhood. And another way we get caught unprepared is because our human brains cannot comprehend the amount of change that motherhood brings to our lives. Paired with that, the fact that we just can't comprehend what's about to happen to us, our brains actually resist the comprehension because we see changes as being threats. Like when left to our own devices, our sort of unmanaged brains think that changing is exhausting and hard, and it makes us very fearful and anxious. Change, those are emotions that we commonly associate with change. So we don't want to comprehend that everything in our lives are going to change. So we kind of adopt this defense mechanism of thinking, oh, I'm going to be fine. To avoid the anxiety and fear that comes with anticipating change, we kind of make up a story that this is what motherhood will be like for me, and use that story to reassure ourselves before the baby arrives. This is 100% what I had done. Um, I had sort of a narrative about what it would be like. This narrative was completely made up by me based on nothing. And I was like, okay, I got this. I'm going to be fine. And then actually the baby arrived, and the difference between my expectations and my reality was huge. So my final point for this list as to why we're sort of unprepared is that we have a phenomenon at work in our brains, which is that people tend to use a combination of underestimating and overestimating that leaves us really confused about how long it actually takes to do something. So I pulled this definition from Wikipedia. The planning fallacy is the name of this phenomenon. The planning fallacy is a phenomenon in which predictions about how much time will be needed to complete a future task display an optimism bias and underestimate the time needed. An optimism bias. That's for sure what I had. An optimism bias that was, I'll just need a couple of weeks or a month or whatever, right? To make whatever changes, or the optimism of it's just not going to be that different. Life's going to kind of just keep going. That was its own form of optimism. So the planning fallacy, put all these things together, and it's just human nature, right? Like everything that I've just described is kind of our baseline brain function that leads us to human nature. But also put it all together and put it in the brain of a brand new working mother, and it's a problem. It's a problem for the working women who are new mothers. And the combination of these things as they happen to us, we're caught by surprise of the challenges of working motherhood. And because we are unprepared at the outset, we then go looking for information from a place where we're overwhelmed. We feel like we're underwater and we have a feeling that things have gone wrong. That's one of those places where our brains go on default, is just this sort of ringing bell that's like, this is wrong, something's gone wrong, I'm getting this wrong, I'm doing it wrong, this shouldn't feel this way, it shouldn't be taking me so long. you know some combination of those thoughts. If you're in this boat, you know exactly what I speak about. It's just this like anxiety, like ringing bell of anxiety in your head all the time. So we go on the hunt for information from this posture. And what do those sources of information look like right now? So I'm going to talk through a few of these. I'm going to rank them by sort of the most formal to the least formal. And, I kind of ranked these myself. Nobody gave me this list. I made this up, but sort of talk about each of them in turn and talk about some of the shortcomings that they have for us. So, first, the most formal is the medical community. And, it's so fascinating, right? When you're pregnant, especially if you're sort of in your later 30s or your 40s, as a lot of my clients are. I was 41 when I had my baby. So your visits to the doctor are like near constant, right? Especially there toward the end. You're just going to the doctor all the time. If you have any underlying health concerns or your blood pressure is an issue, you're going even more often. I have a thyroid condition. So I was going to the doctor literally once a week to get something checked up during my pregnancy. Then you have the baby, you go for like one, maybe two more checkups, and then they just kind of pat you on the head and send you out the door. It's like, okay, see you if you get pregnant again. Unless you express anything that sounds to them like a postpartum issue that does need to be, continued to be cared for by the medical community or in any kind of clinical setting, right? So that is, some percentage of women, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I feel like it's like 6 or 8% of women do kind of continue on with, getting the postpartum help that they need in a medical setting. The rest of us are just kind of shuffled out the door and, said good luck at about the 6 week point, 6 or 8 weeks, sort of depending on where where you live and what your doctor's situation is. But that was the case for me. So when I started looking for help, I knew I didn't need help kind of from the medical community anymore, right? I was healthy, the baby was healthy. We were sort of outside of that purview. So then the second next sort of tier of information that's really out there are the sort of curated websites. This is a couple of examples are babycenter.com or mommybrain.com. I I found these to be occasionally helpful, and in sort of some of the nuts and bolts kind of things, I did get some useful information from them. But as far as my ability to sort of cope with what was happening to me, that still, I just was not served by some of these websites. And I think that the challenge is that these curated websites, especially the ones that rely on advertising, they are speaking to mothers in a way that's geared to, be attractive to their advertisers, to sell advertising, which is fine. I totally get that. But as I am looking for specific information for a professional woman who is a brand new first time mother who was in my early 40s at the time and was really trying to get very specific about my schedule and some tactics and strategies to help me as I re-entered the workforce. And, I wanted information that was geared toward a professional of my level, and I wanted information that was relevant to me. And some of the information on these websites, again, happened to be relevant to me, but I think a lot of it is just far more for a general audience. It's really broad based. Again, this is not a knock to them, but it is a recognition that it just was not specific enough to meet my needs. And as I think about my clients and really, get to know them so specifically, what my clients want is a much deeper dive than what they can actually find on some of these websites. I do think this is getting better. The amount of resources and the variety of voices that are speaking in these resources is better than it was, when I had my baby a couple of years ago. That is for sure the case. But, still, if whatever issue you are having is the one you need the information about. It's not a bunch of related stuff or kind of tangentially related information. I remember trying to find kind of scheduling help. That was what I was really hungry for in the early months. And the stuff was just kind of all over the place, right? And a lot of it was geared toward stay-at-home moms. A lot of it was geared toward, people who just did not fit with me. So again, they're doing the best they can, but they are speaking to a very broad audience. Um, Number 3 on my list is mentors. And I think these people right now are pretty few and far between, right? Professional working women who have, kind of your skill set in the workforce and have had a baby, kind of around your age. And maybe you do have a pool of people that has yielded somebody who's really able to be a mentor to you. If you do, congratulations. I didn't. My group of, sort of professional women peers really didn't have anybody who suited this bill for me. And, I was just so hungry for it. So, mentors, kind of a catch as catch can phenomenon. And then even beyond that are sort of the broader category of peers, friends, and family members. Also, a grab bag, right? I mean, you may have friends who had children before you did, and so now their kids are a little bit older, right? So they're just not on pace with you. Or they're your friends who are, maybe friends from college or something, and they haven't kept pace with you professionally, right? So there's just not that sort of direct fit of career professional, who's very high achieved professionally and who happens to be having a baby at this stage in her life. And then, family members also just a real grab bag. Again, you may be somebody who's very fortunate to have uh, prof- supportive family members who really understand where you are and what you're doing. I didn't. I did not. And I don't think I'm that unusual. I really don't. I think my situation is pretty normal. And then the fifth category on my list is the unfiltered internet, right? This is people in Facebook groups. This is just kind of randomly Googling my problems. I encountered a lot of the unfiltered internet, a very unsatisfying source of information from me, completely it's a grab bag, right? It's just a grab bag of information, none of which I really found to be helpful when I needed it most. So I consulted all of these sources along the way. And as I've been mentioning, as I've been going here, none of them contained what I needed. The entire mission of my coaching practice is to start giving professional working women who are brand new first time mothers their information and support and resources that they need. That is my goal. So I do that through videos like this one and other information that I put out there, and then in my one-on-one coaching practice. So that is private one-on-one coaching that is specifically tailored to what you need when you need it as you make the adjustment to motherhood. And it is all done online. Um, if you are a working woman who is a brand new mother and you have been caught off guard by your experience, coaching could be a very valuable source of information for you. So, knowing why you're having the experience that you're having, instead of just this feeling that something's wrong, what am I doing? Um, Knowing what's happening to you and having somebody help you work through it quickly and efficiently, and then getting access to what is available to you on the other side is a tremendous value that coaching delivers. And that's what I deliver to my clients. So if you are a brand new mother who is a working woman and this information has sounded valuable to you or has sounded like I was sort of maybe describing what you're going through, my coaching practice is currently accepting new clients in my one-on-one coaching program. It would be my pleasure and my honor to be part of your motherhood journey. Feel free to visit my website, heatherhennessy.com, if this is something that might be of interest to you. Thanks so much for watching today. Take care.